We haven't even seen Avengers Infinity War yet, but I don't care. I want to talk about what's coming up next. We're talking Marvel Phase 4 and beyond. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is going to be kind of like a weekly one-shot, but I'm going to be talking about movies. I'm going to be talking about Marvel movies and what the future holds for those guys. So if it's something that you like, make sure you subscribe and stick around for more of this kind of content. So the one thing that I want to talk about is Avengers Infinity War is setting up the stage for Phase 3's finale and Phase 4. And given the conversations that have been had with Kevin Feige, the focus on this is finality. We're talking about wrapping together a total of 22 different movies, but that doesn't mean that there's not going to be 22 movies that come after that. So we've got a few hints and we've got a few confirmations as to what's going to be happening in Phase 4, and we already know of 9 different dates that are going to be hit in the Marvel Universe. So using my brain and some comic books, and that thing called the internet, but using all those things, I actually put together a list of what could be potentially possible, ranking it from most likely to least likely. First off, let's talk about the actual dates and times. So we've got March 27th, 2018, which is the date for Infinity War. Then we have July 6th, 2018 for Ant-Man and the Wasp, March 8th, 2019 for Captain Marvel, May 3rd, 2019, which is going to be Untitled Avengers, and then we've got dates that aren't necessarily confirmed. We've got July 5th, 2019, May 1st, 2020, July 31st, 2020, November 6th, 2020, May 7th, 2021, July 30th, 2021, November 5th, 2021, February 18th, 2022, May 6th, 2022, and July 29th, 2022. There's so many things that we don't necessarily know about. However, let's dive into what we most likely do know. To start things off, in July 5th, 2019, we most likely have the Spider-Man Homecoming sequel. So this is going to likely set up the third movie, but we'll talk about the third movie when we get to it. And then after that, we have the May 1st time frame in 2020, which is going to be for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, or at least that's what you can anticipate. The most recent Guardians of the Galaxy movie released in May, so there's a good chance of success inside that slot, and it's a relatively known entity, so they're probably going to put it out there as quickly as possible, and Guardians is a great way to rebound from the events of Infinity War and whatever the Untitled Avengers movie is, Infinity Gauntlet. So now that we have a rough idea of what's already been confirmed for production, let's take a look at the ones that have a really strong, and we're talking about like even money. These are gimmies. You're most likely going to be seeing these inside the Marvel Universe. First off, we have Black Panther #2, coming off a $1.2 billion box office and being one of the most successful movies in Marvel's history. This is an easy no-brainer. So based on the average time frame between Marvel movies, we can probably peg that one into a 2021 slot. Another movie that we're likely going to see is Doctor Strange #2. So Doctor Strange #2 is going to bring us into different dimensions. So we saw the Dark Dimension in Dormammu, and there are a lot of the other ones that are currently out there. So I would expect us to enter into something along the Dream Dimension or possibly Weird World, but we'll talk about those things as we go. But it sets up different villains and different places for people to come from, so that way we can create new characters inside the Marvel Universe. Another one that we were pretty sure that we're going to get is Spider-Man #3, because Tom Holland signed on for a traditional 6-movie Marvel deal. So if we talk about Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, Infinity War, the sequel to Infinity War, and Civil War as the 5 movies that he's starred in so far, that leaves one movie which is going to most likely be Spider-Man 3. So that, based on the production schedule, I'd probably slot somewhere into the July 2021 timeframe, because it's already performed really well in July, and it's most likely going to be the best fit for a summertime movie and the audience that Spider-Man's cultivated. That leaves us with the last of our really strong candidates for additional movies, and that is Captain Marvel #2, simply because it makes sense for Marvel to tie in a great actress like Brie Larson into at least multiple movies. So if she's appearing in the second Avengers Infinity War movie as well as her own solo movie, at least one more additional film is probably on her contract, if not more after that, but I would probably bank on somewhere around 6, and we'll see why in a few minutes. Once we get out of the movies that have a strong possibility of getting made, let's talk about the ones that are likely. These are about 50-50, so when we're talking about this, the first one that comes to mind is Black Widow. So with Scarlett Johansson and her charisma on the screen and the absolute following that her character has, Black Widow is a shoo-in kind of movie, but also you have the possibility of a Hawkeye film or a dual movie between the two. While I would love to see Natasha Romanoff taking on her own solo film, having Clint Barton in there, and then having that kind of back and forth, seeing maybe how the relationship was formed or possibly how the relationship ends, that is going to be a pretty interesting prospect for Marvel Studios to see what they can make of it. Another movie that I would consider pretty likely is Ant-Man #3. So that's either Ant-Man and the Wasp getting a sequel, or it's another Ant-Man movie with Scott Lang. So while he might not necessarily be the best box office performer, he's definitely a character that Marvel might want to invest in, along with Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp. Next, due to the success of Thor Ragnarok, we're probably going to see a Thor 4 movie, but that's going to require some serious renegotiation for Chris Hemsworth, as well as securing Taika Waititi, who's a pretty hot commodity in Hollywood right now, to to come back to the movie and give it that same kind of flavor that it was known for. So while Thor is a shoo-in to be a great character or one that's really well supported by the fans, it's not necessarily a shoo-in that the movie's going to get made due to these other obligations. However, there still is a character inside the Marvel movies that has a lot of films on his contract, and that's Sebastian Stan, who plays the Winter Soldier. So most likely, I'd anticipate seeing a Winter Soldier film, or possibly we can go into Thunderbolts. And Thunderbolts, if you don't necessarily know, is a team of former reformed villains, so it's perfect opportunity for Winter Soldier, after he's been reformed inside Wakanda, to take on these old villains and give them the ability to introduce brand new characters into a superhero team kind of format without spending the kind of budget that they would in an Avengers movie with a bunch of leading people. As we get a little further down the list, now we're talking about long shots. So these are things that, would possibly be a great introduction into the Marvel Universe, so that way they can show forward progression and create more movies around them, or they've got hints in previous movies that are going to possibly kind of lead to something a little bit more. Marvel has never been one to shy away from introducing something new, so Adam Warlock is probably my first pick because he was teased in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and it's possible that he's going to play a larger role in Guardians Volume 3. Another one that I'd probably put on the long shots list is Miss Marvel Kamala Khan. So while she just reached her 50th issue inside the comics, she's been a real fan favorite, and then with Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel 2 being strong possibilities, if not already in production, we see that Miss Marvel was influenced by Captain Marvel, so it's a great way to create a character using the legacy of another one. I also think that Namor is a really strong possibility for the future of the MCU, simply because it'd be a great setup for Black Panther 2. Black Panther and Namor have had a struggle inside the comics for quite some time, these two kings of various nations, and Namor is an absolute dick. However, he's a great antagonist for Black Panther, and if he has a redeeming arc similar to Killmonger, it'd be easy to identify with him and bring you as the viewer into the city of Atlantis and what kind of culture there is. We also have the possibility for a solo Nova movie, because as Thanos acquires the Power Stone, he's most likely going to have to destroy the rest of the Nova Corps. So that leaves the possibility for a young Nova like Sam Alexander to be introduced into the movies as a solo person taking on these cosmic missions in the place of a larger organization like the Nova Corps. But while he's out there, he might run into somebody like Beta Ray Bill, who's also a possibility and had a little Easter egg inside Thor Ragnarok. So this Thor parallel is a grand warrior from the Corbinite race who holds his own Stormbringer, his own hammer that was forged by Odin himself. So he's a possibility to bring in there, and he could tie into a much grander scale in a lot of different movies. Of course, you also have a new Captain America that could show up, and Sam Wilson is a prime candidate, having taken over for Captain America inside the comic books. So while he might kind of drop the Falcon persona and take up the mantle of Captain America, especially after Captain America potentially dies inside Infinity War, it could be a really great transition for Anthony Mackie as a character and an actor. There are two properties that I think are a little bit more suited for TV, but could possibly be introduced into the MCU, and that would be Moon Knight, which is the story of Mark Spector. He's had a psychotic break, and it's caused him to have multiple personalities that all take on different kind of forms inside his storyline, but the real consistent through line is Moon Knight, which is his alter ego vigilante crime fighter that's a really street-level urban setting. I think that it fits a little bit more into the Marvel Netflix universe or the Marvel streaming universe, and the similar things can be said for She-Hulk, which is kind of an offshoot of the actual Incredible Hulk. The cousin of Bruce Banner, Jennifer Walters, who was infused with the Hulk's blood as part of a transfusion that saved her life but turned her into She-Hulk. There's a lot more control, and there's a possibility for a legal drama. That's why I think it's a bit better fit for TV. Another long shot that I was thinking about is Power Pack. So as the Marvel Cinematic Universe ages, it'd be great to introduce a bunch of new characters that could really bring in a lot of a younger audience. So Power Pack is just a team of kids that's going to really appeal to a younger audience that could possibly continue on the legacy of the MCU. Inside the range of the longest of the long shots, which I'm calling the Hail Marys, we have a team called the Ultimates. So the Ultimates is like the Avengers in space trying to solve the largest cosmic problems inside the MCU. So this is a team that was championed by Blue Marvel, Spectrum, who is Monica Rambeau, and could possibly make an appearance inside the Captain Marvel movie, as well as Captain Marvel, Black Panther, and America Chavez, an interdimensional person that can lead into a few different teams and really opens up the possibility for the MCU. We also have other pantheons, so instead of just dealing with the Norse mythology, we actually have Hercules as well as the Greek mythology. Odin was a sky father, Zeus is a sky father, and then you also have Ares, but Hercules is really that kind of main, down-to-earth hero that has superhuman strength, godlike strength, almost immortal if not immortal. We also have somebody like Robert Reynolds the Sentry. So the Sentry is dealing with a dual personality disorder, one of the strongest heroes inside the Marvel Universe, as well as an evil, almost demonic entity inside him called the Void, which has caused some of the greatest calamities inside the Marvel Universe. So that is always a possibility. However, if we're talking about Infinity War, let's talk about the Eternals. The Eternals are the race that Thanos is descended from, but he is an outlier. He's a mutant. So the Eternals are actually a long-lived race that has resided on Earth, and then they split up into two different factions, one going to Titan, which gave birth to Thanos, and one staying on Earth, but losing memories and powers. So diving into the Eternals gives you another opportunity to explore that cosmic level realm and the mythos of the actual Marvel Universe. This could also lead into stories about somebody like Wonder Man. Simon Williams, who's also been a movie star but also part of the Avengers, started the West Coast Avengers and associated himself with Hawkeye. So he's a possibility as well. But when I dive into these, I really want to see somebody like Hyperion, who's an alternate universe version of Superman and his Squadron Supreme or Squadron Sinister, depending on how you want to introduce them. So there's all these parallels to DC characters that could possibly cross over inside the Marvel Universe through these various people, and Hyperion actually played a relatively large role in Time Runs Out, which is another storyline that you could possibly put into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. While we're out in space, why don't we talk about somebody like Quasar, who has the quantum bands, and he's just this giant, powerful space entity who was part of the Annihilators, and the Annihilators had Ronan the Accuser, had Silver Surfer, had Beta Ray Bill. If you're talking about people that are taking on the greatest of cosmic level threats, the Annihilators are it, and Quasar is another way to explore space inside the MCU. And then if you want to explore other dimensions, we could talk about Black Knight, who was one of the older characters, and he populates Weird World, which is another way to get into another dimension. So Black Knight has had a few different interactions with Black Panther and a number of other characters, including Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange villains, so he's definitely an option. But the biggest one that I think is probably the best opportunity for the MCU is Young Avengers or Champions. So Young Avengers and Champions gives you the ability to introduce characters like Ironheart, who's a replacement for Iron Man. You can introduce Wiccan, who's a replacement for Doctor Strange. You can also introduce America Chavez before she joins a team like the Ultimates. You even have characters like Stature, who's the daughter of Scott Lang, Amadeus Cho, who eventually takes over for Bruce Banner's Incredible Hulk, and Kate Bishop, who picks up the mantle of Hawkeye. So these are all different possibilities, and Young Avengers Champions gives you the opportunity to create an ensemble cast out of these great characters and break them out into their own teams, or possibly introduce them in the main series and then create this new Avengers kind of system without having to hold on to a lot of legacy characters. Of course, there is some hell no kind of characters like Miracle Man, but I'm not going to say what Marvel can and can't do. So I want to know what you guys think, so hit me up in the comments down below so we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.